Eidolon Station floated in the middle of neutral space, a silent giant made of steel and glass. It was where wars were prevented and lies were told with a smile. Ships from every known species docked here. The air smelled of oil, metal, and something always slightly burned. Elias Merrick stood near one of the many docking bays, arms folded across his chest. He wore a dark uniform marked with the crest of Earth's diplomatic corps. Tall, strong, and calm. He looked like a soldier, but his role was peace. A loud clang rang out nearby. Two alien delegates were arguing in front of a customs checkpoint. One was short, scaled, and blue-skinned, a traitor from Drixon Prime. The other was tall and furry, a diplomat from the Thurn Collective. Their voices rose sharply, words in their native tongues spitting out fast and angry. Elias walked over quietly. The customs officer looked nervous. The crowd around the checkpoint was growing. If this escalated, things could turn violent fast. Elias stepped between the two aliens, his voice steady. "Let's not make a scene. Everyone's watching." The Drixon hissed. "He accused me of smuggling." The Thurn snarled back. "He was smuggling." Elias raised his hand. "You both have clearance. You're here for talks, not fights. If you want, we can go to security together and review the scans." Neither of them wanted that. Slowly, the tension faded. The Drixon spat on the floor and turned away. The Thurn grunted and walked off in the opposite direction. Crisis avoided. The customs officer let out a breath. "Thanks, Officer Merrick." Elias nodded. "Keep the line moving." He walked away, back toward the quieter parts of the station. His conger piece buzzed. "Elias, council briefing at 900. Room 3. "Understood," he replied. Eidolon was beautiful in its way. Towering windows showed stars stretching forever. Ships passed in and out, carrying goods, news, and sometimes trouble. Elias had walked these halls for 6 years. He had stopped fights, guarded diplomats, and kept Earth's image clean. But he never forgot what they called his people behind closed doors. Deathworlders. It wasn't an insult. Earth was a death world, full of danger, harsh climates, and predators. Humanity had evolved to be tough, adaptable, and sometimes brutal. Other species feared that. They saw humans as a threat, not a partner. That was why Elias worked so hard to prove them wrong. He entered the council briefing room. Representatives from over a dozen species sat in a circle, speaking through translators. Their robes were colorful, their words careful. Elias stood behind Earth's delegate, Ambassador Quinn. She was sharp, polite, and tired from too many years of being dismissed. "Next issue," said the council chair, a gelatinous creature named Yultha. Territorial dispute in Sector 9. As they argued about trade routes and patrol rights, Elias scanned the room. Velrix Thun was there, the Tarsk Coalition's High Chancellor. He sat still, eyes half-lidded, mouth curled in a small smirk. He noticed Elias looking. Their eyes met for a moment. Elias felt something cold pass between them. Later, as the meeting ended, Velrix stood and slowly walked past Elias. He leaned close, speaking quietly. "You've trained your people well. Polite. Civilized. Let's hope they stay that way." Elias didn't answer. He just stared straight ahead. Velrix walked away, calm and pleased. Elias clenched his fists. He had come here to keep the peace, but peace, he realized, was starting to crack. The call came in the middle of the station's rest cycle. The lights in Elias Merrick's room were dim, his datapad still glowing on the table beside him. He wasn't asleep. He rarely slept deeply anymore. The buzz in his ear was sharp and urgent. "Elias, it's Virel 3. He sat up instantly. "What happened?" There was a pause. A voice on the other end finally spoke again, softer this time. "It's gone." Virel 3 was a human colony on the edge of the Epsilon frontier. Built in red soil, rich with minerals and quiet skies, it had grown into a place of hope. Farmers, scientists, engineers, all trying to build a better future. 50,000 settlers lived there. Now, there was only silence. The first reports said it was a natural disaster, a tectonic collapse, a freak accident. But the words didn't make sense. Earthquakes didn't leave that kind of damage. The satellite footage was brutal. The entire colony, flattened, scorched, torn apart like paper. There were no survivors. Elias stood in the main viewing hall of Eidolon Station, surrounded by others from the Earth delegation. A live feed of the memorial was being broadcast from orbit over what remained of Varel 3. Rows of faces, family, friends, and officials, watched the screen in silence. Ambassador Quinn spoke a few words. Her voice cracked near the end. Elias didn't speak. He watched the stars behind the display, the emptiness beyond them. He had known some of the people on Varel 3. One of them, a woman named Kira Tal, had once patched up his wounds after a rough mission on a mining moon. She had moved to the colony last year, looking for peace. Her name was on the list of the dead. Later, the Galactic Council held an emergency session. The room was crowded and tense. Delegates from various species offered condolences, but not action. The data suggests it was a structural failure, said a tall, silver-skinned delegate from the Yari Federation. No evidence of attack, said another, flicking through floating screens. A mining accident, perhaps. Elias stood at the back, jaw tight. Ambassador Quinn pushed forward. We request an official investigation. Independent, thorough, and immediate. Yoltha, the council chair, shifted in its tank. There is no proof of foul play. Quinn leaned in. 50,000 lives. Human lives. We deserve more than speculation. Velrix Thun sat near the center of the room, silent and unreadable. His dark eyes stared straight ahead. When the council finally moved to end the meeting, he stood, bowed lightly, and left, without a word. Back in the quiet halls of Eidolon, Elias sat alone at a corner table in the station's dim mess hall. A mug of cold coffee sat untouched in front of him. His comm buzzed again. This time, it was a coded message. Encrypted, hidden behind a dozen layers. He entered the passphrase, KTTAL 1989. A voice came through, jittery, nervous, familiar. Merrick, it wasn't an accident. I've got something you need to see. Elias straightened in his chair. His eyes narrowed. Who are you? Someone who saw the logs. Someone who knows where the bomb came from. Elias leaned forward, his voice low. Talk. The voice paused. Then, not here. Too risky. Meet me in subsection 7, docking bay 12. Bring no one. The transmission ended. Elias sat still for a moment. Then he stood, fast and quiet. Something inside him shifted. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. Subsection 7 was the quietest part of Eidolon Station. Old cargo holds, unused docking bays, and flickering lights gave it a forgotten feel. Elias Merrick moved through the shadows, his steps silent. He wore a plain jacket instead of his uniform. No badge, no weapons, just focus. Docking bay 12 was nearly empty. One small shuttle sat in the corner, dark and cold. The door hissed open when he approached. Inside, the air smelled of old circuits and coolant. A figure stepped out from the shadows. Tariq, Elias said, recognizing the voice. Tariq was a tech spinner, a thin, spider-like species known for data work and a talent for hiding in networks. Elias had worked with him before, years ago, during a piracy sting in the Zarn Belt. He was smart, fast, and never spoke without purpose. You shouldn't be here, Tariq said, eyes scanning the corners. Too many ears on this part of the station. Elias folded his arms. You said you had something. Tariq didn't answer. Instead, he moved to a console and plugged in a data crystal. A screen lit up, showing logs from Varel 3. There, he said, pointing to a line of text. energy spike, right before the colony collapsed. Not natural. Not an accident. Elias stepped closer. What kind of energy? Graviton surge. Focused. Controlled. It came from below the colony, like something was planted. Elias's voice was flat. A grav bomb. Tariq nodded once. Rare, expensive, not easy to make. He pulled up a second file. Stolen shipping records from the black market. This kind of tech was sold 3 months ago, only to one buyer. A new image popped up. Velric Thun. Elias stared at the screen. The name, the date, the signature. It was all there. He spoke slowly. You're sure this is real? Tariq's eyes flicked. I verified it 3 times. The shipment went to a Tarsk military depot. From there, no records, but the signature matches one used by their covered ops wing. Elias clenched his jaw. They planted the bomb, then blamed it on nature. They didn't want just to scare you, Tariq said. They wanted to break something, make an example. Elias stepped back. His hands curled into fists. 50,000 people. Gone. And the council had done nothing. I have to bring this to them, Elias said. Tariq tilted his head. They already know. Some of them, at least. That's why they won't investigate. They're afraid of what happens if it leads back to Velrix. Elias turned away. He wanted to punch something, break something. Instead, he took the data crystal and slid it into his coat. I won't let it go, he said. This won't be buried. The next morning, Elias stood in the council chamber again. This time, he didn't stay silent. He stepped forward and placed the crystal in the main console. The screen lit up, showing the grav bomb logs and the purchase trail. Names, dates, evidence. Gasps echoed around the room. This, Elias said, voice strong and steady, is what destroyed Virel 3. Not an accident. Not nature. A weapon. Bought and used by the Tarsk Coalition. Silence. Yulthe shifted nervously in its tank. These claims are serious. They're true, Elias cut in. And you knew, or you refused to look. Velric sat still, arms folded. Calm. Cold. He didn't deny it. He didn't speak. Ambassador Quinn stepped beside Elias. We demand action. A vote. Sanctions. A few delegates nodded, but most stayed quiet. Yulthe's voice trembled. No direct action can be taken until a full investigation confirms. Elias slammed his hand on the table. Every delay costs lives, and every delay protects murderers. Velrix finally spoke, slow and measured. Be careful, Officer Merrick. This station thrives on peace. Do not bring war here. Elias stared him down. You already did. That night, Elias stood on one of the station's upper decks, watching ships pass in and out. Behind him, he heard Quinn approach. You knew they wouldn't act, she said. I had to try. She sighed. They're afraid of us. They think if we snap, we'll burn everything down. Elias turned toward her. Maybe they should stop pushing. Then. He walked away, mind sharp, heart heavy. Something inside him had changed. This wasn't about proving humanity's place anymore. Now, it was about justice. The explosion tore through the research station on Hallen 9 just after dawn. Scientists, engineers, and students, all human, were caught in the blast. 37 dead, dozens more injured. It was the second unprovoked attack in less than a month. The official report blamed a power failure, but Elias Merrick didn't believe that. Not anymore. He stood in the wreckage 2 days later, boots crunching over broken glass and scorched metal. He had arrived ahead of the investigation team, hoping to find something before the cleanup crews erased the truth. He found a small shard of synthetic alloy near the blast core, a type used in military-grade detonators. Tarsk make. He pocketed it. This wasn't sabotage, it was war. and the galaxy still refused to call it that. Back on Eidolon Station, Elias sat in a private conference room with a few key members of Earth's diplomatic and security command. The door was sealed. No recordings, no translators, just humans. Ambassador Quen looked tired. Her voice was sharp. "They're killing us slowly. Colonies, outposts, one by one." Elias nodded. "And the Council's doing nothing. They want us to stay quiet. They think if we lash out, we'll become what they fear." A young commander leaned forward. "Maybe fear isn't the worst thing." The room went silent. Elias looked at each of them. "They think we're always holding back," he said. "They're right. We are. But there's a difference between choosing peace and being forced into silence." He placed the Tarsk detonator shard on the table. "They're not afraid of our strength. They're counting on our restraint." Quen spoke again. "If we strike, we'll lose the moral ground we fought for." "We've already lost lives," Elias said. "And if we wait, we'll lose more." They voted that night. It wasn't unanimous, but it was clear. The order was given, not for war, but for a warning. Over the next week, Earth's forces moved quietly. Scout ships were recalled. Defense systems came online. Elite strike teams were positioned near key Tarsk installations. It was all done in silence. No press releases, no threats. Just quiet preparation. Humanity had always trained for the worst. Now, they were simply ready for it. Elias led one of the response units. He stood in a command room aboard the Artemis, a stealth cruiser hovering just outside Tarsk space. A transmission came through. "Target confirmed. Civilian risk minimal. Orders." Elias took a deep breath. "Proceed." Minutes later, a Tarsk weapons lab, the one that built grav bombs, went offline. No deaths, no warning, just gone. The message was clear. Humanity wasn't asking for respect anymore. They were demanding it. On Eidolon Station, the Galactic Council met in emergency session. Panicked voices filled the chamber. Unprovoked action. Violation of peace terms. Reckless escalation. Ambassador Quen stood calmly. "We have buried our dead, endured your silence, and waited for justice. We will not wait anymore." Yulva, the council chair, trembled. "What is your endgame?" Quen looked at Elias, then back to the chamber. "Balance." In the quiet hours of the night, Velrix Thuan met with two of his top advisors in a shadowed corner of the Tarsk embassy. "They're not supposed to act this quickly," one hissed. Velrix was silent. "They're supposed to hesitate," the other said. "They're supposed to play by the rules." Still, Velrix said nothing. He stared out a narrow window, watching human ships patrol the station's perimeter. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold. "They've stopped being nice." The galaxy didn't believe it at first. They thought the Deathworlders were bluffing, showing their teeth but still chained by diplomacy. But when the second Tarsk military outpost went dark in less than an hour, no one laughed anymore. Humanity had moved, and they moved fast. Elias Merrick stood in the command center of the Artemis, staring at the tactical screen. Across it, red icons blinked and vanished as one Tarsk facility after another was neutralized. No civilian casualties, no unnecessary force. Every strike was clean, efficient, and deliberate. "Targets 5 through 8 confirmed," said the ship's eye. "Minimal resistance. Orders complete." Elias gave a slow nod. "Good work. Pull us back to holding position." He stepped away from the console and looked out the viewport. Out there, across hundreds of light years, human ships were on the move. Not in conquest, in correction. For every colony lost, for every friend buried, a message was being sent. "We are not your prey." On Eidolon Station, panic rippled through the council chamber. Delegates shouted over one another. Demands, warnings, pleas. Ambassador Quen stood calmly in the center, listening. Yultha, the council chair, struggled to restore order. This is unprecedented, he cried. These are acts of aggression. Quen responded without raising her voice. These are acts of response. Velrix Thun sat at his usual place, silent and still. His face gave away nothing, but his eyes followed every word, every breath. Quen looked straight at him. You set the fire, she said, and now you fear the flames. Velrix finally spoke. You threaten everything we've built. This fragile peace. You shattered it, Quen said. When you murdered our people, when you thought we'd never stand. Meanwhile, Elias led a small strike team aboard a Tarsk cruiser found near the edge of Terran space. They boarded fast, without warning. No shots fired. The Tarsk crew surrendered quickly. He moved through the narrow halls until he reached the command deck. Velrix Thun was waiting. Not a hologram. Not a message. The real thing. Captured during a secret transit between systems. Elias stepped forward, face calm, eyes sharp. Velrix looked at him without fear. So, this is how it ends. Elias didn't answer at first. He stared at the being who had signed the death of Firel III, the one who smiled in council chambers while Earth buried its dead. We offered peace, Elias said, again and again. Velrix's voice was flat. You're too dangerous, too wild. The galaxy was safer when you were small. Elias stepped closer. No, it was just easier to ignore us when we stayed quiet. Velrix looked away. Elias tapped his comm. Extraction complete. Secure the prisoner. Hours later, Velrix sat in a sealed chamber on Eidolon, under council guard. He would face charges. He would answer for what he had done. But the real shift had already happened. The galaxy saw the message written in action, not words. Humanity would not be trampled, not ignored, not erased. They were done being nice. In the aftermath, council meetings were quieter. Accords were revisited, treaties rewritten, borders respected. Other species watched the humans carefully now. Not out of pity, out of caution. Elias returned to the viewing deck of the Artemis, watching the stars pass by. His face was tired, but steady. Commander Reyna, his second-in-command, walked up beside him. It's done, she said. No, Elias replied. It's just different now. She nodded. They stood in silence for a while, letting the stars speak. Weeks passed. Eidolon Station was quieter than usual. Not because of fewer ships or less trade, but because everyone now watched their words more carefully. Where once there had been smirks and side glances when humans walked through the halls, now there was silence, respect, and fear. No one doubted the Deathworlders anymore. Elias Merrick stood in the great hall outside the council chamber. He leaned against the railing, looking out at the stars. Below, hundreds of delegates moved through the station's polished corridors. Their voices were low. No arguments today. Ambassador Quen stepped beside him. She looked better, less tired, more certain. They've approved the reforms, she said. Elias nodded. Equal voting rights for human colonies, full access to defense treaties, and the investigation into Firel III will be public. They're trying to clean their hands, Elias said. They're trying to survive, Quen replied. We made them look in the mirror. He didn't smile, but a part of him felt calmer. Justice had started. Not finished, but started. Elsewhere on the station, alien children sat in quiet corners, listening to stories told in whispers. Did you hear? One said, eyes wide. They say the humans tore down a fortress with just a dozen ships. They say one of them stared down Velrix and he blinked. Another replied. They don't ask twice, said a third. They ask once. After that, you run. They weren't true stories. Not exactly. But that didn't matter. Every species still told tales about the day the Deathworlders decided to stop being nice. Elias visited the memorial for Viral 3 before leaving the station. It was simple, a quiet chamber with names written on glass walls and a soft blue light that never faded. He stood alone and touched the panel with Kira Tau written in clean, etched lines. "I kept the promise," he said softly. "We didn't let it slide." He stood in silence for a moment longer, then turned and walked away. As he boarded the Artemis, his comm buzzed with a new message. A colony needed help negotiating with nearby systems. Elias was being requested to lead the talks. He smiled, a small, tired one. Even after everything, the galaxy still needed diplomats. But now, they listened when humans spoke. The Artemis left dock, engines flaring gently as it moved back into the stars. Elias stood at the bridge, hands behind his back, eyes forward. Behind him, a crew that trusted him. Ahead of him, a galaxy forever changed.